I want to make a clip here, just a clip for so-called anti-Zionist Jews. Because sadly, a lot of anti-Zionist Jews get like hurty feelings and talk about how, guys, I'm really not comfortable with this anti-Semitism in our movement and stuff. Just sadly something that a lot of them do a lot. You know, a lot of them tend to focus very much on themselves. A lot of them tend to seem to be in the movement, more so because it's like a rebellion against their own community. I mean, you know, it makes them feel rebellious and special. And especially because they're given special treatment among the movement just for being Jewish for some reason. We'll talk about that more in a second. So they're not so much in it because they want to free the Palestinian people. They're a lot of the time in it as like this bizarre, like special identity thing. It makes them feel fuzzy inside. It makes them feel different. You know, that's the wrong reason, okay? It's detrimental, in fact. So I want to make a video specifically talking about anti-Zionist Jews. Now, I shouldn't have to do this because the concept of an anti-Zionist Jew shouldn't exist. What do I mean by that? Do I mean that Jews can't be anti-Zionist? Of course not. What I mean is that specifically being an anti-Zionist Jew is just a bizarre thing to identify as. You know, Zionism is a Jewish supremacist movement based on massacring people, not just Palestinians, you know, Lebanese, Syrians, stealing their land, giving it to Jews for the benefit of Jews. You know, you're not special if you're Jewish and you oppose this. It doesn't really make much sense for there to be specifically people who identify as anti-Zionist Jews. And you see this all the time. Like, when you see an anti-Zionist Jew, you're more likely to know immediately that they're an anti-Zionist Jew because they'll fucking tell you all about it. You know, on their social media, they're going to tell you about it at least 5 times. They can't not. Like, a lot of them have it in their fucking usernames. It's bizarre, honestly. Like, Jewish anti-Zionist. I'm super Jewish and I'm super anti-Zionist. There's a really great Eli Valley comic about this. By the way, Eli Valley, let me just show you Eli Valley. He's a long time, very much anti-Zionist. He specifically makes art about Jews, about like problems in the Jewish community. He doesn't tell you that he's Jewish. You wouldn't know that he's Jewish. In fact, the only reason that I found out that Eli Valley was Jewish is because I intuited it from his comics, because I figured he would get called anti-Semite a lot more if he wasn't Jewish for the comics that he makes. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known. You know, it's possible to be an anti-Zionist Jew about telling everyone about it every 2 seconds. It's also detrimental that you do so. But here's a great comic that is really emblematic of like anti-Zionist Jews and the way that they fucking talk about how like Jewish they are, specifically endlessly. Now, he didn't mean this to be about anti-Zionists, okay? He meant this to be about Zionists, but anti-Zionist Jews reinforce this sort of stuff. Like, you know, 3 guys, one of them is Theodore Herzl. I love being Jewish. It's so edgy. I could talk about being Jewish forever. In fact, I think I will. Oh my God, I'm Jewish. This is how so many anti-Zionist Jews sound. It's just true. I'm not going to apologize for it because it's fucking true. It's bizarre. Why does it matter to you so much? It comes from like a very like ethno-nationalist, like latent ethno-nationalism that a lot of these people feel for the Jewish ethnicity, and it seeps into anti-Zionism as well, into their anti-Zionism as well, because they have this latent belief, clearly, because otherwise they wouldn't be acting like this, that there's something special about being Jewish. And sadly, the pro-Palestine movement has been like very much hurt by this over the last few decades, especially because we have put these people on a pedestal for being Jewish. We've always, for some reason, last 30 years especially, based our movement around Jewish people at its head, which is nonsensical. It's a movement against Jewish supremacy. What the fuck gives these people extra credibility that we put them at the head of it? In many ways, they have put themselves at the head of it, in ways that are detrimental. Why, you might ask? Let me tell you. It's very easy to explain. The very basis of Israel is Jewish exceptionalism and Jewish supremacy, this notion that Jews are special. There's something special about Jews that makes them especially meritorious, that makes their suffering especially worrisome. That means that we need to give them a special level of deference that we don't afford to other groups of people, pretty much ever. That's the exact same thing that these Jewish anti-Zionists who emphasize their Jewishness do. They don't challenge this foundational aspect of Zionism. They reinforce it by pointing to themselves as specifically Jews who are against Israel. We are Jewish and, you know, this isn't done in our name. What does that mean? Would it be okay if it was done in your name? If not, then why does it matter? But the implication that you emphasize, you know, when you emphasize that is that it would be okay if it was. And this, you know, comes to a problem when, you know, it comes to a bit of a barrier when we face the reality that most Jews do support Zionism. So what does it mean? You know, what's the implication of that? Because the implication of you saying not in my name was clearly that if it was in your name, perhaps it might be justified. So when for most Jews it is in their name, what does that imply? It doesn't matter if it's in your name or not. It's wrong. It doesn't matter if you're a Jew and you oppose Zionism or not. It's still wrong. You know, your voice isn't worth any more than an Italian's voice. People are always like, but it's important that we have these people around so they can show that, you know, anti-Zionism isn't anti-Semitism. Well, anti-Zionism isn't anti-Semitism regardless of what these people say or not. We don't need them to approve of it so that we don't need some token Jew to give us permission to be against Zionism. No, we fucking don't. I reject this premise in the first place. It's ludicrous. If you want to make progress for anti-Zionism, you need to explain that to people without just appealing to a token Jew. Otherwise, you're not getting anywhere because you're not challenging the foundational principles of Israel itself, which are Jewish exceptionalism, which is being reinforced by these people who emphasize their Jewishness. So here's what I want to tell you. I want to talk to you about how you can actually be effective rather than a detriment, because many of you have been a detriment for a very long time. There are too many of you who maybe you haven't noticed what you do, but you do it. You know, it might be innocent. You make it all about yourselves. It's not about you. You've talked enough about you. You're not victims. You're not the victims here. You're not the victims anywhere, really. You know, this is not 1939 anymore. Even apart from this very weird ethnic solidarity that Jews have that really no other group has in the world, right? Like, if you're an American Jew, this is another thing as well. It gets kind of an aside here, but it is nonetheless important because I feel like it's a big reason why this happens. A big thing that you should do, like if you're an American Jew, you shouldn't feel any specific sense of community with an Australian Jew. What the fuck do they have to do with you? They're from a totally different country to you. You know, I don't feel any specific sense of community with someone who's like of Greek descent in the USA. What the fuck do I have to do with them? It's very weird that you guys are like this, and it's very much due to like a very strong sense of like ethnic solidarity and ethnic exceptionalism and ethnic supremacy indeed in your community. Other groups of people don't do this. And this is certainly part of the root of where this comes from. Like, it's fine to be Jewish. It's fine to have, you know, elements and vestiges of Jewish culture. It's fine to practice the Jewish religion. But when you get to like this degree, like, you feel some sense of community and solidarity with some guy on the other side of the world who doesn't share the Jewish religion with you because, say, he's an atheist, because like his grandma was Jewish or whatever. So he's technically matrilineally Jewish. And that's the only thing that he has in common with you is like this tenuous ancestral connection and certain elements of like Jewish culture that he shares with you that, like, all the same, I share certain elements of Greek culture with some random Greek guy who lives in Macedonia. What the fuck does that have to do with anything? I don't know who that guy is. I couldn't even talk to him if I met him. You know, I certainly don't specifically identify as Greek or ever. I don't consider myself that. And, you know, a part of fighting Zionism is indeed going to be challenging this very weird ethnic nationalism that pervades Jewish communities nowadays, which very much is linked to Zionism, because, you know, Zionism is ethnic nationalism. So if you're like a non-Zionist who nonetheless very strongly identifies as ethnically Jewish, and you feel this like innate ethnic solidarity with Jews everywhere, it's very easy to get from point A to point B, because these things are very similar. But, you know, that was a tangent. That's not the main thing that I'm here to talk about. I want to tell the anti-Zionist Jewish people, here's the number one thing that you need to do to stop like being, as many of you unfortunately have been, detriments to the movement. Stop you from reinforcing like Jewish exceptionalism, which helps the Israeli state, whether you mean to use it in that way or not. One is just be a normal anti-Zionist, as I've been saying. Don't tell everyone you're Jewish constantly. It's irrelevant. Be one part of the crowd, just as I am, just as anyone else is. If you are like distinctive, you know, be in the way that like someone like Norman Finkelstein is. You're distinctive in that you have a lot of good things to say. You frame things in a way that is very useful. Basically, you're in the position that you are for merit rather than ethnicity. That's one thing. This is going to hurt a lot of people because a lot of Jewish people, a lot of fairly unremarkable Jewish people love getting deference from the pro-Palestinian movement. They love making it all about themselves. They love putting themselves at the head of it. A lot of them are just here for the like ego boost that they get from that. And we need to stop that because it's detrimental to the actual movement. This movement is about making you feel good. It's not about doing PR for the Jewish community. It's about freeing Palestinians. And by reinforcing Jewish exceptionalism, you're making that harder, not easier. Number two, don't engage in this absurd, like Zionist adjacent thing where you police the anti-Zionist movement for anti-Semitism endlessly. Even if you do see real anti-Semitism, because ultimately, it's just not that big of a deal. Just as like anti-German sentiment in fighting Nazism wasn't that big of a deal. Just as like anti-white sentiment in fighting apartheid wasn't that big of a deal. Some of it's going to be there inevitably. But when you like specifically focus on it, you really make yourself seem a lot of the time as if you're not here to free Palestinians and you're more here, again, for yourselves. Because anti-Semitism is certainly no priority right now. Not even close. And many anti-Zionist Jewish people, not even just anti-Zionist Jewish people, a lot of self-branded anti-Zionists just do nothing but police the movement for anti-Semitism. Like it's like their main priority. Like they're not even here primarily for the Palestinian people. They're primarily here to like do PR for Jewish people, to like do PR for the Jewish community. It's their main thing because they've been indoctrinated by Jewish exceptionalism into thinking that, you know, that's the most important thing ever, everywhere, all the time. You know, the most important thing that we need to be doing is attacking these notions, right? That like anti-Semitism is this special form of racism that we always need to be worried about and feel especially uncomfortable about, because it's not. It's just anti-Jewish racism, which is not that specifically concerning right now. A lot of you believe there's a massive rise in anti-Semitism. Why? Because you see like people like saying slurs on Twitter or something. I wish that for many other groups that was the extent of the racism that they face. I wish. There's so many other groups who would kill to be in the position that Jews are in, where they are in this like economically privileged position in society, socially privileged as well, politically privileged as well, uniquely coddled, if anything. And the main thing that they had to worry about was like a Nick Fuentes fan abusing them racially on social media. That would be like a luxury for everyone else. So, you know, you guys need a reality check here. I have a video about how the anti-Semitism crisis is bullshit. There's no data backing it up. It's simply not that big of a deal. Anti-Semitism does exist, obviously, but so does anti-white racism. There's some people who legitimately hate whites and want to kill them. Sorry, but right now, anti-Semitism is on that level. Check the video. There is no anti-Semitism crisis. I've shown this before. So you guys need to just stop focusing so much on anti-Semitism, because by doing so, and by policing the pro-Palestinian movement from within it, in the way that Zionists themselves do, you're helping Zionism. You're helping to spread their narratives. Then the narratives of this perennial Jewish peril, this perennial anti-Semitic violent threat, always, all the time. You are doing like actual purity testing in doing that. Real, genuine purity testing. Actual wrecker behavior. I don't use that word lightly because it's used so terribly most of the time. Usually it's used to like justify abandoning the Palestinian people, but in this case, I'm using it to say that you are like detrimentally affecting the movement for their liberation. Don't do the work of the ADL for the ADL. Don't spread the narratives of the Zionist movement. Like me, like everyone else in the movement, if you are Jewish and you are an anti-Zionist, then you are here to help free Palestinians from Jewish supremacism. You're not here to like police others on talking about Jewish people in the correct way. You're not here to express your discomfort about how people talk about, you know, the pervasive Zionism among the Jewish community and, you know, the Jewish supremacist state of Israel that most of them support. You're not here to tell us how special you are as a Jewish person and how everyone, you know, by implication, needs to defer to your leadership and your especially special voice. You're not here to make it about you. You're here to be the same as everyone else. If you are to be a leader, if you are to be at the movement's head, it should be because of your merit, not because of your ethnicity. And if you're not willing to be just another voice in the crowd, if you're not willing to be someone who, if you are emphasized, if you are propped up, is because of your merit rather than your ethnicity, then just leave. Just leave. The movement is moving past the need for token Jewish voices. We need to stop emphasizing token Jewish voices. It doesn't help. You see to Zionist narratives of what Jews say is what really matters. What you end up with is Zionist solutions. We don't want those. You know, this like Jewish voice for peace sort of thing, what did it get us? It got us the Gaza genocide. It hasn't worked. Time for a change in strategy. Another thing that I've seen some supposed anti-Zionist Jews do is justify consorting with Zionists in their community. Very weirdly as well. Like, there are so many Jews who identify as anti-Zionist who go to like synagogues that are like full of Zionists, even IDF veterans, and they justify that as well. Like, they say, well, what else am I supposed to do? It's my religion. You expect me not to practice my religion? Yeah, actually, if that's the only option that you have, then yeah, don't go. Don't go. Your religion is not more important than liberating the Palestinian people. You know, I'd say the same thing to someone whose only option for a mosque was a mosque full of fucking like insane ISIS crazies. No, you don't fucking go there. It's not more important than not being a part of that. They're not endorsing that. They're not normalizing it by sitting down beside those people. There's no justification for it. You know, I've already said, like, there's no justification for Hassan Piker advocating for Brad Lander, a Zionist. There's no justification for you either, sitting beside Zionists, breaking bread with them daily. Unless you're forced into like a job or something. But, your religious practice is a choice. It's not a job. You're not forced to practice your religion for the sake of, like, even being able to purchase food or whatever. There's no excuse. You don't have the economic element there. Basically, the crux of what I'm saying here is, if you are Jewish, who are against Israel, you're against Jewish ethno-nationalism, the best thing that you can do is not to be Jewish exceptionalist. It's what you really need to do. It's not the best thing you can do, it's what you need to do. Because everything that I'm saying here comes from Jewish exceptionalism. All of it. Me being a Jewish anti-Zionist makes me especially special. Where does that come from? Jewish exceptionalism. The idea that Jews are exceptional in some way. The foundational ideology of Israel. Where does, this not in my name stuff come from? The idea that if it was actually in your name, it would matter or not. Jewish exceptionalism. Where does this idea that, like, we need to police the movement for anti-Semitism as if it's this special form of racism that always takes priority over everything comes from Jewish exceptionalism? Where does this idea that if you are Jewish and an anti-Zionist, you should, like, be above criticism because of who you associate with in your community and in your religious life? Where does that come from? Jewish exceptionalism. You're Jewish. Jews just get to do things that other people aren't allowed to do. That's where that notion comes from. Things that we would not accept in other analogous circumstances. This is fundamental to challenging the very core tenets that underlie Western support of Israel. And you can be an asset against that, but not because you're Jewish, because you are an anti-Zionist with the right opinion. And this is how, if you want to be a part of the movement, you should operate. You shouldn't be here as a Jew. You should be here as a person, like everyone else here is. Like I am. Like Norman Finkelstein is. What relevance is there to Norman Finkelstein being Jewish? Every now and again, he does like a cheap invocation of his parents going through the Holocaust. That's about it. More of you should be like that. And if you're not like that, then try to become like that. And if you can't become like that, you can't abide by it, then, okay, we don't need you. We're going to move past this phase of, like, what is ultimately the NGO industrial complex of, like, Jewish anti-Zionist activism. Let me show you a great example of this. Jewish Voice for Peace, this supposedly anti-Zionist NGO. The Gaza genocide is the best thing that has ever happened to them because they have put themselves at the head of the movement. They take all the visibility, they take all the attention, they eat up a ton of the resources, of the donations, and do they ever profit from it? In 2022, Jewish Voice for Peace had $4.1 million in total assets. By the end of 2023, the first year of the Gaza genocide, they had $10 million in total assets. Donations to them went up from $3 million to $11 million in just 1 year. The 39 employees of Jewish Voice for Peace get paid from this money. They are such a group of outsized influence that garners outsized attention. Not only do they enforce Jewish exceptionalism among the pro-Palestine movement in a very detrimental way to it, but God, do they ever make money from it. Not only do its members, like, center themselves and their community as if it's the most important fucking thing about fighting a Jewish supremacist state, kills people on the basis that they're not Jewish. But God, do they ever make a lot of money from it. We have to fight this shit. We need to make Palestinians the center of their own movement. And if you're not doing that, if you're making Jews the center of the pro-Palestinian movement, by reinforcing Jewish exceptionalism as I've been over here, if you're not willing to change your practices, which I certainly hope that you will, rather than just leaving, but if you're not willing to do that, then just leave, please. It's preferential to you continuing to make the movement all about you.